Texas Pecan Gourmet Coffee. Sleek new design, same bold flavor. Fill your cup with the flavor of pecan and cocoa. The only gourmet coffee you'll ever need. Handcrafted, slow roasted, perfection. Our coffee provides a comforting experience for any time of day. Start with Texas Pecan and savor the heartland in each brew. Get yours now at monkeywerx.com.
All right. Hey, welcome, folks. Today, look, this is going to be a new one for us. We're going to get just all things Russia. We're going to get into all the stuff that's going on. I do believe we have a new Iron Curtain that has been propped up, and we're going to get into the deets. Poland is definitely going to be the tripwire. I'm going to show you some things that have taken shape from World War II we're going to just do a quick comparison. I've got about 6, maybe even 7 things that we'll talk to when it comes to things that are reoccurring. History is indeed repeating itself. We can see the similarities, very eye-opening. So buckle up for this SITREP, folks. It's 7/31/2025, and we're coming to you live here from the Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas. And so without further ado, let's just jump right into it all. I'm going to show you the skies up over the United States right now. And hey, by the way, if you would, join us over here on Patreon. We do a lot more content than you guys see over here on the tube or even on Rumble. I've got weekend sit reps that we do, and then we also do a Monkey Minute. So we kind of tie in what's going on biblically around the world. So anyway, up in the sky right now, we're sitting around 352. It's just cycled a little bit, but I will tell you, look at the amount of 60s that are up. That's going to be your Blackhawks, and 85 of those. Look at it across the United States. Insane numbers. Why did it just blank on me like that? Let's get it back. And you're going to see, along our border pretty heavily. Then, of course, what I don't see is right here in the Panhandle. I see a lot of stuff over Florida. I see a whole bunch up the eastern seaboard and all the way up the northeast. So very, very busy from a Blackhawk perspective, usually tied to, some ice activity, which would be taking down the bad guys. All right. So let's peel that back. Let's get into what else is up. We take a look at the air refuelers, KC-135s, and then let me show you the 767-200s. Combined, we're sitting at 31, so we're just slightly elevated over what we normally would be our baseline at 25. And notice they are centrally located for the most part. We've got some scattered stuff out here. Now, let's take that back. And then let me see. I'm just going to do a little shred, and we're going to show you the Q1s. We got 2 of those up, more than likely. Oh, mercy. Yeah. So check this out, folks. These right here, these Q1s, these are right on the U.S. border. I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if that's not tied, maybe flying on operating out of Fort Drum. But this is, these are Predator drones for the most part. They're called Gray Eagles, but they are super high tech. It's what you would see, again, as I mentioned in our last SITREP, it's what you'd see deployed in places like Afghanistan and Iraq and out in the sandbox. They have just a lot of capabilities. They also carry Hellfire missiles. I don't know that these are carrying them, but I will tell you, to see 2 of them up at this neck of the woods is definitely not common. All right. Now, the other piece, too, we get over to the Q4 drones. This is going to be your Global Hawks. These things are super high tech. And let me see. Anything over the U.S.? Nada. Let me take you where they are. Over the Black Sea. This one looks to be just getting, I say it's airborne. It's probably either climbing out or getting ready to come back in. They operate out of Malta and out of the southern end of Italy. 55,000 feet, and let me see if I can grab the traces for these, and that'll kind of give us an idea of where it's going. But looks to be level at this current moment. And, check it out. It's headed up north. So gets a little boogie up here near Kaliningrad, and then all the way up to the top end. Probably, notice it goes dark right here. So it's probably looking at right here. This is a Russia. And then let's see what else we got going on down here. And then this a little low altitude one there, but that's not the other one. The other one is going to be out near Japan. And I don't have a flight trace for that. It's at 34,850 feet. So again, some of the Q suite that is up, and we always pay attention to those because those are super high-tech drones. Okay, now speaking of the high-tech stuff, this one here too, this is probably I don't know what that is, honestly. I'll have to look it up on the hex code to see if it gives me anything not tied to a list or anything else. It looks to be kind of loitering off of North Korea. So, all right. Speaking of intel, let's jump over here and gander what is happening. You can see there is some look at the North Korea side of the house. We'll start off in the U.S. Most of this is going to be LaSalle Aviation. And again, you talk about some broken traces headed out off the Pacific coastline, it looks like, then headed over the mountains. And then you get over here. This is 2 days worth of stuff, folks. So this is very active looking in Belarus, Kaliningrad, out over the Black Sea. So they are clearly busy doing that piece of it. And then we get into the drone stuff. And you'll notice we were just looking at it off of Malta over the Mediterranean. You can see as it headed up towards the Black Sea yet again. The little corkscrews, you can see a little pigtail as it climbs up and back down, right? But looks like they were looking closely at Lebanon and over into Israel right here. So now there was some pressers that just came out where somebody was saying basically turning their back on Lebanon. U.S., all of the dignitaries they're basically throwing some shade at Lebanon. It looks like maybe something's about to spike off there as well. Just trying to leverage them once again. All right, then you can see one that just goes across, back and forth, DC. That is absolutely gathering data. That is not just a deadhead flight one direction and back. All right, then we start talking R-135, signal intelligence. So I showed you the ISR activity over Europe. Take again, look at this, out over the Black Sea. And then looking very closely, that little spike that points out over Belarus is not, that's a bad feed. All right, it curves and you can see it's looking very closely at Belarus and then over into St. Petersburg. Again, signal intelligence. So this is listening to and gathering cell data. Broken trace as it heads out towards the East Coast. Again, R-135, signal intelligence. And then you can see, remember, I just showed you the Q1 drones that are up there looking into Canada. Well, we got a little bit of listening going on there as well, out over the UP and then up into Canada. So, all right. Now, last one, we'll just dabble in the AWACS side because they are very active as well. Remember, this is an advanced warning aircraft, but it also does a lot of things besides just looking for nukes. Clearly into Russia, Belarus, we're probably concerned about things moving. That would be off the eastern side of Poland and over Poland, and then up into Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, etc. Again, modern Iron Curtain. And then you can see a little bit of stuff there down over the southern border. Now, that again, as I mentioned, they do not just looking for nukes, but they can track ship traffic. They can do a lot of different things when it comes to signal intelligence as well. They've got a lot of different capabilities. So, okay. Now, let's just take a look. I want to show you what is going on from the Ruski perspective. I'll give you the flights here first, and then we're going to get into the news because we do have a lot to cover. This, you'll notice the flights. This is the far eastern flank. This is headed over towards where that earthquake was and the Russian nuclear subbase. All right. And then you can see 2 days worth, very, very active across Russia for 2 days. That's a lot of flying, a lot of things going into Kaliningrad and then just spread out end to end from a Russian perspective. So they've also been on the uptick as of late. And then you got one that just spikes, goes way north of Greenland and back. Right, just kind of stops out there and comes back. That's a long flight. So I have to zoom in just to get it, but you can see the traces. All right, so that's going to be the Ruskies, what they've been up to. Okay, now, the other day we spoke, I said, hey, look, there's definitely a lot of military movement headed into the Middle East. what it appears. When I said boots on the ground, I'm talking about some type of humanitarian effort. It could be limited from a war perspective, maybe assisting IDF clearing out Hamas, etc. But my guess is Trump and crew are going to try to get everybody out of Gaza, relocate them, right, somewhere else, preferably other than the United States, and then they're going to try to rebuild Gaza. That's my guess. Okay, so just based on everything that's going into the area. All right, now that takes us over here to this side. We start talking about what's going on with Russia. Now, yesterday they had an 8.8 magnitude earthquake, which is pretty significant. We'll get into some of the deets around that, but this is the location. You've got right out here, this is Alaska. You got Anchorage here, but you can see all of the earthquake activity. 8.8 is a doozy. It's a top 6, I think. But their military base, they have a nuclear sub base that is right in this location as well, that we have heard that it was damaged because of the tsunami. But we have not been able to get any information on it. So I'm sure we've got satellites looking at it, trying to assess what actually happened. But you'll notice tsunami alerts all the way here. As you drop down off of Hawaii's got them. You can see the things around the shadow around the islands. And then when you start looking, you'll see all the way up the West Coast, right? Also tsunami alerts, all right? Okay. Let's take that away. Let's get into this a little bit more. It says tsunami waves recorded across the entire Pacific after massive quake off Russia, giving live updates, etc. Now, again, this is kind of a remote area. There's not much there. Not really a lot of people want to live up there, but it is absolutely a big one. So when you start talking about the size of the earthquake, you get down into top 6, 8.8. So 9.5 happened in Chile back in 1960. But here's the thing I want just from the takeaway of all of this, okay? If you look at how many are in the top 10 that have occurred since 2000, that is a lion's share of what we have on the board here. So 8.6 in 2012, you got an 8.8 in 2010, you have an 8.8 that just happened a couple of days ago. You've got a 9.1 in 2004, a 9.1 in 2011. So pay attention to that because, you always hear about, birthing pains. There is absolutely an uptick when it comes to the strength just since 2000 to now in terms of earthquakes. They are absolutely getting stronger and more intense. So, again, I'm not the earthquake guy. Go watch Dutch Sense. That's my boy, and he is dead on. In fact, it drives the government crazy because he is so spot on with his forecasts and what he sees. He's figured it out. He's broken the code. So jump over there, Dutch Sense. Again, that's going to be your go-to, all right? All right, now let's get on we'll peel some of this back. Earthquake and tsunami strike near Russia's nuclear military base. It says that a massive earthquake just hit near Russia's only nuclear submarine base in the Pacific, raising questions as to the state of Moscow's last line of defense in Asia. So, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. And again, that was on that same peninsula. And we're just waiting to see actually what comes from it all. I am sure when it comes to what is going on there on ground in that base, they do not want us to know that. So they're going to try to absolutely suppress that information. All right. So, because it's a very big deal. All right. Now, this one, anytime you hear some of the deep state guys starting to sound off, I'm going to tell you it rings a lot of alarms for me, right? And so Petraeus, yeah, if you can't figure that out, that dude is a deep stater. Says, stop him cold. So Petraeus issues a stark warning on the path to Ukraine peace. He says only battlefield change can halt Russia's war. Petraeus says, as Trump reiterates his disappointment with Putin and sets a new ceasefire deadline of about 10 to 12 days. That was from the other day on the 29th. So again, anytime you start to hear the deep state guys step in and make comments that, we need to pay attention because that means somebody is working something on the puppet strings behind the scenes. All right. So you just have to kind of read, between the lines here. Okay, so while we're talking Navy and oceans and all the other stuff, one thing I did want to point out, we always take a look at this. I'm going to hit refresh. I just want to show you the stack up that's going on here when it comes to this, the Persian Gulf here, Gulf of Oman here. Every time we check in, you're noticing more and more ships are parked on both sides. This is not going to go on forever before somebody starts to realize, hey, we got a problem with supply and the price of oil is going to spike, okay? So pay close attention to that, because the more we continue to see stuff stack up on both sides, it's also a pretty big, I mean, look at these out in the distance. It's a pretty big indicator that there is more going on than meets the eye, all right? So figured I would just bounce in and touch on that. Now, let me do this. I'm going to shift gears on you a minute. I want to show you why Poland is the new tripwire, just like they were in World War II. I'm going to show you that history is starting to repeat itself. And we're going to go through some of the things. I want to show you comparisons between World War II versus now. Now, the other day in the SITREP, I said, ooh, you know what? There's a lot of stuff when it comes to, and that's why I said 6 or 7. The 7th would actually be the first. And that is, look, when you start seeing all these immigrant camps popping up, that is what took place right before World War II, and those ended up being concentration camps downstream. So pay attention to that, because we have not seen since World War II the amount of these immigration camps and these detention centers popping up, especially here in the United States. They're everywhere, folks. But they're not just here. They're in China. They're in Australia. They're all around the world. And so people are starting to see this is, I mean, we talked about the boats that were holding immigrants in England, right? That went quiet fast, didn't it? All right, so let's get into the deets when we start talking about history, right? So look at the strategic rearmament. In 1936 through 1938, Germany defies Versailles, okay? They reoccupy the Rhineland and then mass produce tanks, artillery, and aircraft. Japan militarized the Pacific, and Italy expanded into Africa. So you look at what's going on today in similarities. You've got Russia rebuilding its military, launching a Ukrainian invasion. NATO, right? The nations there, like Poland, ramp up defense spending 4.7% of GDP. Okay, so they're preparing for war. China expands naval research, naval reach and air bases across the Indo-Pacific. And Iran acquires S-400s and HQ air defenses from Russia and China. So you can see that people are starting to get very, very armed up. We are really, I mean, honestly, we're looking war right in the face. It is not going to be long. When all of this stuff started popping off, it took about 6 years before World War was in play. That was at a snail's pace compared to where we are today. Things are ramping very quickly here, all right? And it's everything is faster, okay? Technology is faster, communication's faster, so therefore the way the battlefield is taking shape is also faster, all right? So now, look at this. Number 2, proxy testing grounds, okay? Back then, you had Spanish Civil War. That became a testing ground for the German and Italian weapons and tactics. Soviet support opposing factions, okay? That was what happened back pre-World War II. Now you have Ukraine in today's proxy battlefield, AI drones, loitering munitions, cyber attacks, EW warfare, Western tech versus Russian legacy systems in real time. That's why I said this is going to go faster than what happened in World War II. Think about this, folks. The United States we're in a proxy war with Russia. You may not realize that, but we are, because we are the ones that are giving them the weapons to fight Russia. We're just not doing it ourselves. So you have to pay close attention to that, because what's happening is we are using it to field our new stuff and test new war policies, right? How do we attack the battlefield? What works? What doesn't work? How do our weapon systems work out against the old, Cold War era Soviet stuff? So yeah, we're watching it in real time unfold. And so that right there, it's a huge test bed for us. And of course, now you start to see the stuff that's starting to come into play with the drones, and the drone activity is insane what they're starting to do. All right. And we're going to talk about those as well here in just a minute. Then appeasement and weak red lines, right? Back then, Western democracies appeased Hitler, right? You had the Munich Agreement, right? And then you had peace in our time, right? It falls apart months later. And that was a short-lived. It's nothing compared to what Trump is talking when it comes to peace. The League of Nations fails to act decisively. So now you got NATO, who avoids direct conflict with Russia. UN fails to restrain Iran, Israel, or China. And Western leaders hesitant, to cross the escalation thresholds. Everybody is dabbling, okay? And nobody's shutting it down. That's the whole key takeaway. And we've been talking about that for a while. Think about this. This whole deal has been going on for almost 4 years now. 4 years. Russia, they could have taken Ukraine in probably weeks if they really were serious about doing it. Instead, they dabble. And it actually worked because what happened? They bled down everybody's war reserves, right? To the point where the U.S. is scrambling to get caught up with 153 millimeter artillery, drone capabilities, all kinds of stuff, right? Everybody depleted everything they had because Ukraine needed all of it and then some just to stave off Russia, and Russia just peppered them and dabbled, and they continue to do it today. All right, now we get over here, number 4, right? Regional flashpoints merging, right? Back then, Austria, 1938, and then you had, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, and of course, Czechoslovakia, I can say that one, but the other one, 1938, Czechoslovakia, 1939, all fall in quick succession, right? One right after another, and then Poland becomes the tripwire. As I mentioned, front line, okay? That's where we're stacking everything up right now into Poland, because that is going to be the last, or actually the first line of defense when it comes to fighting off. You've got them right up against Belarus. Russia will come through there. They'll use Belarus to attack Poland, but that's going to be your first line of defense. It's going to be the tripwire, all right? So you look at it now, you've got comparisons. You've got Crimea in 2014. That was taken over by Russia. All right, Ukraine 2022 and going. Gaza, Lebanon 2023, still going. Taiwan looming, right? So you got all of these things that are starting to be taken over, right? We know that the Taiwan thing, China is just waiting to take Taiwan. And then Poland is, again, like I said, the tripwire, armed to the teeth and backed by NATO, as well as the United States. Okay. Number 5, intelligence misses, and public apathy. Then most of Europe hoped Hitler would stop at each step. So as he started to take different places, they thought, that's all he's going to do. He's not going to keep coming. He would have moved all the way to London, honestly. I mean, that was, I think, his goal, right? He was going all the way to England. That was going to become Germany. Going to take over all of Europe, right? So few imagined a full-scale global war. That's where we are today. People see this stuff in pockets, right? So most of the public sees isolated conflicts, not a systemic collapse. And actually, that's what's happening. That's why I said we are facing, we're looking war right in the face right now. Signs of World War III have been dismissed as just tension or politics as usual, but it pops left and right, all right, all around the world. Right? You're seeing governments collapse. There's all kinds of stuff happening, right? Forced migration. Now, look at this. Number 6, the economic strain and collapse ahead. Now, typically in the past, you've always heard me say war is an economy. So when you had things like the Great Depression, destabilized democracies, and empowered fascists, right? War helped reset broken economic systems. So it was used to get everybody back on their feet. They went to war. It turned on the industrial complex, right? A military industrial complex, all the manufacturing. But look, things are different today, right? Debt, the global debt, the inflation, the energy wars that are happening, food insecurity, it is off the chain right now around the world. In fact, U.S., just the interest on the debt alone for the U.S. is higher than our DOD spend annually. It's absolutely insane. It's unsustainable. So now what happens if you go into a war footing? You basically break the bank. You don't have the money to even fight a war. You can't afford to go to war. Why? Because you're going to collapse your economy because you can't print more money. You got nothing to back it. So it is very unstable now. So it's going to be different than what we have seen typically in the past, right? Okay. So now that we've gone through just where we are in the past to where we are today, you can see there are a lot of similarities happening around the world that are precursors to the next World War. All right. Now, take a look at what's going on. If you just see all of the danger boxes and stuff, look at Russia covered up. Look all the way to the north, out over the water. You've got it down. Ukraine's completely covered. You get into Russia, part of that is covered over here. All kinds of red boxes. Europe and Russia primarily are, it's probably 75, 80% covered in some type of temporary flight restriction or a NOTAM. So lots of stuff going on. Again, you get up here into Poland and you can see, even as you start to dial in. Now notice these lighter boxes, these are going to be unmanned. These are drones. Okay, that's where you got drone flights around Warsaw, etc. But look, right up to the border, right, all the way around. And then you look at these, very bizarre over Romania. And again, if you get down low, right? Now this right here is going to be, that's a pinch point, okay? Here's why. If you look at the traffic that flows through the Black Sea, right? Let me take you back over to the ship traffic for a second. And let me back this up and I'll take us up to the Black Sea. Notice the flows, right? This is how Russia gets its oil and its cargo. It runs right through here in Istanbul, right? Squeezes through this little area. And again, look on the other side of the Black Sea at the stuff that stacks up, right? Going into the ports for unloading, etc. So yeah, this is going to be a big problem. That right there will be an area that they will absolutely control to keep Russia from getting oil in and out and out to other places. Okay. All right. I would jump over here and see what Trump is up to. Now that's for Wednesday. I don't have the refresh. So let's move on. Okay. So let's get up here. Trump slashes Russian ultimatum to 10 or 12 days. Okay. Now, we just talked about that. It was, he gave him, I think it was a 50-day term. I think September 1 was kind of the goal. Now it's 10 to 12 days. So when you start to hear guys like this talking about, a deep stater talking about, you got to get things out on the battlefield, all right? And then you start to hear the talk of, hey, we're going to give him 10 to 12 days. Somebody is steering him for a very specific reason to leverage this now, okay? And so pay attention to that, because even though Putin seems to be somewhat open to it, it just never seems to take place. And I'm going to show you, I got a little game theory as we get further into this when we start talking about Zalinski and what's going on. Because when you start to hear about, this pressure to get everybody to the table and get peace to the table between the two countries, you start to hear the deep state chattering. That may be why Trump is trying to advance it, because he knows the deep state's up to something, all right? And like I said, I'm going to show you, all right? Now, look at this. We talk about the battlefield, how it is changing. Again, when you start talking about this advanced technology, when you start talking AI, this thing self-learns by the minute, by the second, okay? It's very fast and very adaptive to anything you throw at it. So 33,000 AI drone strike kits headed to Ukraine in the Pentagon deal. Full disclosure, I don't know how to read. I just memorize words. So I do apologize. But at the heart of the package is Skynode, all right? An AI-powered mini computer that turns manual drones into autonomous tactical platforms. Yeah, so look, this is the new shape of the battlefield, and we're using it as a test ground. So when you see the DoD pumping this kind of stuff in, the capabilities are being they're being turned very quickly, right? And they're learning this stuff because of AI, and now they're taking everything that's happening from an application perspective out on the battlefield, and they're going, all right, well, look, now we can tweak this and add this and create this capability. Next thing you know, you've got swarms, you have electronic warfare stuff, you have all kinds of different, things that can actually penetrate and explode. I mean, there's a lot of things that these can do, very dangerous, and they don't have to be big to do it. You've heard about killbots, right? Where they're little, small, the size of a 50-cent piece, but they're programmable, and they hit somebody like a bullet, right? And all you do is basically give them a target, and off they go, and you can dump out, hundreds of thousands of these out of the back of a C-130, and they're off to the races. So very real capabilities out there, and DARPA's behind a lot of it. So pay attention because this is absolutely the wave of the future. It is, it's changing fast, right? Okay, U.S. announces a $4 billion loan guarantee for Poland military purchases. Again, the tripwire, you can see we are providing Poland with everything they need because they're going to be the front line of defense. That is the new, modern iron wall, okay? United States announced Friday that it is providing a $4 billion loan guarantee for the purchase of American military equipment by Poland, which borders both Russia and war-torn Ukraine. Poland remains one of America's strongest and most dependable allies in Europe, a frontline nation on NATO's eastern flank, and a leader in defense investment. So a little press release there. But again, look at this. It noted the statement that Poland has made several major purchases of U.S. weapons, including the Apache helicopter, HIMARS rocket systems, and Patriot air defense. So again, frontline, this is going to be the tripwire. When things go hot, that's what's going to come through into Europe from that spot. All right. All right. Ukrainian drones target St. Petersburg as Putin attends a scaled down Navy Day. So again, I just mentioned drones. This is the direction everything is going. Look, you don't lose soldiers except for the ones being attacked. You're not losing any type of asset other than a very low value drone that is programmed to go take out what it needs to. All right. Okay. Now it gets into around, all the vessels and the real jab here is just the fact that it's a scaled down Navy Day, that Russia's, having some issues. All right. Below a record 524 drones downed in the attacks on May 7th ahead of Russia's Victory Day. You may remember that was the last time. So you had a Victory Day, then now you've got the Navy Day, and of course they hit them with more drones. Okay. Western and Ukrainian officials held secret meetings on ousting Zalinski. That's coming from Russian intel. I think there's something to this, folks. Like I said, you heard the deep state. Remember how he came into power, all right? Obama, 2014. We basically overthrew the then sitting president, and then we put in our guy, okay? So it says top officials in Kiev have backed plans to replace the Ukrainian leader with former military chief. Now, the interesting piece is, remember, Trump's trying to get them to come to the table for some type of peace talk, and this guy doesn't seem to care to do it. Every time we start, he pops something off on Russia, then Russia pops something back, and so it eventually becomes, all right, we isolated the problem, all right? Now, to prove that point, let me just show you, remember what happened just back on, what was this, the 22nd, so not that long ago. You remember this? Uprising all over Ukraine. That's east to west, folks. So that right there tells you. And I was showing you there were some flights where we had some of the, we just call them agency bubbas, all right, that flew very close by and were in the vicinity, not necessarily in Ukraine, but they may have landed outside of that because you can't fly in here anyway. But yeah, we had a sighting of them in the area, and then you see this stuff happening, all right? And so again, we have mastered how to overthrow governments, right? Our agencies get in there, they know how to really stir the pot, and if you got somebody you don't like, boom, they're gone, right? So that brings us to today, and then of course you can see this. This is just basically this talking about the hackers of the Ukrainian military intelligence hacking in. This one is the government of Crimea servers. Thousands of documents about abduction of Ukrainian children were discovered. All right, we'll table that one for now, but just let that resonate, okay? All right. seems to be, we have 300,000 missing in the U.S. It can't account for, and that, yeah, there's definitely a trend here, folks. Okay, don't want to talk about what's going on with the big old Epi guy, right? Okay, Ukrainian drone raid leaves 150,000 without power in Russia. So again, dozens of UAVs targeted civilian infrastructure and take out power. And it's just these little tiny things. They zing in there and boom, power is out. And you can see images of stuff. I mean, this is somebody's shoe and you can see little piece parts here. So, but yeah, again, it's the new face. And I think, Trump said, yeah, we're about to give him some really, really high-tech stuff. And that's what he was talking about, I imagine. That was it. All right. Okay. Zalinski vows more attacks inside Russia as civilian casualties mount in eastern Ukraine. Again, I think Trump and others feel like maybe we get somebody else in there, we can get peace to the table. So when you start seeing all the uprising stuff, that tells you people are starting, the natives are getting restless. All right. So eyes on that, because it looks like there is something in play. Does it happen overnight? I don't know. When you start talking about 10 to 12 days, this may be his last chance to basically come to the table and actually get real peace. Otherwise, you may see somebody else stepping into that role. Okay. All right. And we get up to this one here. Russian strike on Ukrainian prison kills 17. Now, the interesting thing out of all of this is there aren't any names, but why would they hit a prison? Right? Why? I mean, who is in there that we don't know about that they're trying to take out? That's probably the bigger takeaway here. It doesn't go into any of that. You have to kind of read between the lines here, but it's very possible that the Ukrainians had somebody in there that the Russians didn't want talking, and maybe they tried to take out that person, all right, or people, okay? All right, and then Russia unveils this new robotic assault tank based on some of the older chassis. Look, they're everything, like I just showed you the drones, and that is where everything is going. It's unmanned. You're gonna have all these robots fighting on the field. As you can see, nobody will be inside here. This thing will be driven by somebody else from like playing a Xbox game. Okay, again, this is the shape of the new modern battlefield and where it's all going. Electronic warfare is going to be key, because you're going to have to jam things up and EMP them and things like that. That is the direction, and you probably see the drones starting to get to that capability where they just come in, EMP something, and it's just dead on the battlefield. You never get it back. Right? The Kremlin says it's committed to peace in Ukraine after Trump's new deadline. So, like I said, Putin seems to be leaning forward, saying, all right, we're willing to go and talk about this. It doesn't ever produce fruit. But I think when you see here, it said the initial 50-day deadline to 10 or 12 days. And so it says U.S. President earlier said that he would slash his initial 50-day deadline to 10 or 12 days, that he was not interested in talking to Putin anymore. He said, we have taken note of President Trump's statement yesterday. That was coming from Putin, and the SVO, basically special military operations, continues. And this is Dmitry, using Russia's term for its offensive. He also noted a slowdown in attempts to restore ties with the United States after Trump's comments. We would like to see more dynamics. We are interested in this. In order to move forward, we need impulses from both sides. So it's not just Ukraine, but the U.S. Look, if you look behind the veil, they're negotiating with us. At the end of the day, this is where I think the rubber really meets the road. And that is the fact that as long as people are supplying Ukraine with weapons, especially the United States, there's not going to be any peace. They're going to use everything that we give them against Russia until it runs out. So then you have to go back to NATO. Now, remember, Trump had made a point at one, I guess probably 4 months ago or so, where he said, hey, I'm pulling everybody out. We're pulling our troops out. And that was leverage to get the NATO guys to step up to the plate. Did we pull anybody out? I haven't seen any indication that we're moving anybody back. All right. We're all still there. Everybody's still in place. And you've got all this chatter coming from the deep state about the battlefield, and then you got some potential overthrow of Zalinski. So there are definitely some dynamics afoot that I think we need to pay very close attention to. All right. Last one here. Ukraine, Belarus hackers claim a cyber attack on Russia's Aeroflot. That's one of their major airlines. And says Ukrainian and Belarusian hacker groups claim responsibility Monday for a cyber attack. Now, that's interesting out of Belarus because that is pro-Russia. So the responsibility on Monday for a cyber attack against Russia's national airline that has grounded dozens of flights. So, yeah, you know, that is, again, you've got drone attacks. Things are kind of getting cyber and getting soft. So, again, just pay attention to it all because the battlefield is starting to change. And when things pop off, it's not going to be like World War II where, you know, it took 6 years. We're 4 years into this already. And if it goes 6, it's only 2 more years out. But I don't think it's going to go that far. I think if anything pops off, it's going to happen before then. So eyes to the skies, folks. They definitely tell a story, and you can watch all the stuff shift, and you can see the dynamics right now going into Middle East, but nothing has changed or moved when it comes to Europe. I'm not seeing any flights going into RZE, which is a good indicator, but it doesn't mean they aren't coming in by rail or by, you know, cargo ship or something else. So, all right. Listen, that's going to do it for the SITREP today. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next Tuesday for the next SITREP. You guys be safe out there. God bless. Monkey out.